All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna be putting together some ideas, some concepts and practices from previous videos. So a little more of an advanced kind of routine or structure for routine. So going to be thinking about moving in different combinations for the shoulders and the shoulder complex. So thinking about the difference of position of, say, like palm up, which is going to be largely like biceps in the elbow. It's going to be wrist flexors down here, biceps, and then also biceps, because bi meaning two, there's two heads. So the short head is more elbow flexion, and then the long head comes up into the shoulders, shoulder flexion, so like an uppercut motion. If I go thumb up, we're talking about the brachioradialis muscle that runs in through here, okay? And then that ties in with like your subscap, or not your subscap, but your supraspinatus muscle, which is one of your rotator cuff muscles, sits under the upper trapezius and runs down here. So you don't need to know all the names, you just have to have an idea of like how you're biasing through that muscle. Those muscles is like a chain of muscles that become more biased and can become more activated in those positions. Lastly, we have palm down, which is going to be more wrist extensors here. And up into, actually underneath the biceps, we have the brachialis, which is actually our primary elbow flexor, but it's hidden under the biceps. So it's a big, strong muscle in there, and that one's largely an elbow muscle though. So it's specialized for the elbow versus the biceps was the elbow and shoulder. But then we have the deltoids more here. So depending on what position you're in, when you get all those things in order, and again, we're going to be using the whole complex, so that also includes the scapula, moving more in that S plane if we're doing it like that, and then also the thoracic. So we, where we talked about rotation, we can talk about also like extension, like lifting, pulling the shoulder blade back and down, and be able to kind of follow that chain in those three different patterns. So depending on what you're feeling there, you want to not push into pain, not overload, overstress, but you want to understand that there are differences in how we're doing things, and it does matter. And also can help you to guide to fill in those gaps as needed. One last piece of information, it's important to understand that if I'm thumb down here or palm down, I'm going to be less able to unlock my shoulder. So I got to get a lot more from my chest and my shoulder blade here, because that's about all I can do with the shoulder. I got to come out here. However, if I go thumb up or especially palm up, I should be able to unlock. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to instantly have that range. If you're tight, it may be restricted, but you won't get an actual like block there, and that's because there's knuckles on the head of the humerus or along there, and that has to be able to clear the acromion on the part of the shoulder blade to come out around. It has to rotate to get in position so it can kind of unlock it. So that matters too. So here we go. I'm going to go onto my back first, and then we can do this more upright, maybe sitting, standing. Okay, so I'm going to be on my back. We're going to think about stability and versus mobility. So I'm going to anchor from my feet, my hips, my lower ribs anchored to the table, because I don't want to like arch my back to compensate. And I may want to have my head more flat down to more of a neutral position here. Okay, so I'm going to stretch tall through the spine, lock out my elbow to start, and I can choose which I'm going to start. Probably easiest to start with your knuckles up first. So again, more deltoids here, and then also more from the chest and the shoulder blade as I anchor from my ribs and my hips. So I want to keep that along that S plane, kind of the wheel here, turning like a pulley without compromising, and really anchor here. So for me, this is my weaker side, so I got to work a little harder on that one. Okay, and then I can go thumb up, again, there, and then finally palm up. Now we can also add in like wrist, here, because of gravity, it's not going to feel like it's doing a whole lot, but you can kind of imagine wrist and elbow too, but that makes it a little more complicated because of more degrees of freedom. So in this position, it might be better just to focus on up to the shoulder from your body through your shoulder blade and shoulder, and then work the elbow and wrist in the other positions. Okay, and I can do the same thing on the other side and kind of compare back and forth, or if I have two weights here, I can do with both. You can do this without weight too, if that's too challenging or painful with the weights. So coming up here now, same thing, but now I can do more wrist, right? Versus here, and especially if you're having some kind of issue with like tennis elbow or golfer's elbow here on the inside. So we're understanding if that's the extensors more with the tennis elbow or the golfer's elbow here. So that depends on what kind of activities you're doing or what causes pain, and maybe where you need more stability from your body to be able to move there and not overload, overstress those areas. So you got to be able to kind of adjust and mix and match in that way. Okay, so I can also do this in standing. I'm going to come back to the wall for this. Here. So I can anchor, I can stabilize to the wall, get a little bit more that way. Got to keep my chest forward, but my hips back, my ribs anchored back, not necessarily touching, but in that direction. Feel the core, feel the glutes, feel the legs to stabilize. Working there, hand, wrist, elbow, and I can do it with the shoulder girdle, and I can do it with all of them. Kind of like uppercut, right? Kind of a hammering motion, and then whatever this would be. I don't have a good example off the top of my head right now. Okay, so that through all those you can kind of piece things together and try to kind of find that flow and that balance of stability. Make sure you have enough stabilization first before you start to unlock things and move. And then as you're moving, like where are you allowing movement from, and how much do you have to adjust your stability and where everything's coming from there.